Good morning and welcome to The Take. I'm Pete Najarian for Market Rebellion. Well, the dislocation in the markets just continues. You look over at the Dow, and yesterday started off pretty strong, got to the flat point, and then finished down about 86 points on the day. Meanwhile, you look over at the Nasdaq, hitting new highs and finishing fairly strong yesterday. So a real dislocation that just continues, and we've seen it day in and day out, one way or the other. We've seen days where obviously the Nasdaq's been the drag, and we've seen the Dow actually move it to the upside. So we've just continued to watch how this plays out. A lot of people still watching the S&P. You know, you want to watch a pot boil? That seems to be the theme here because I've been watching this for quite some time, and we'll keep an eye on that. But to me, it's not quite as important as others seem to be making it out to be. Now, the volatility index yesterday, it really has contracted. And I know I've brought this up time and time again, but it's looking closer without some sort of a major catalyst, like we are going to start breaking towards 20. And I'm talking about 20 itself, and then maybe even getting into the teens, because the range has gotten so tight, and we're looking at the volatility right now trading between 21 and a half, call it 22 and a half, very tight range. And yesterday, right around that 21 and a half area certainly does stand out in terms of what kind of movement we're seeing right now. And quite honestly, it's actually probably a little bit inflated for the kind of movement that we're seeing within the markets during the day itself. So that's something that we're going to be watching a little bit closer. But obviously, with the catalyst, certainly we could be very quickly back up and above 30, or as we continue on this path, maybe we start to break down. We'll keep a very close eye on that. Now, gold yesterday, having a pretty nice day, a little bit of a bounce back, up 2.25%. Silver up about 6% yesterday, back up and over that 27.50 level. And then you look over at crude. Crude's been in this tight range for a while. Call it 41 to 43. It's trading right around now 42.60 yesterday. And it's just pretty interesting how tight that market has become, because oil was so volatile for a while, and that volatility has certainly come back as well. Now, what was really leading the Nasdaq yesterday? Well, a lot of familiar names, and specifically, you got to just keep pointing to Tesla. And Tesla's been an absolutely amazing story. People are talking about the wealth this has generated for Elon Musk. Doesn't seem to be a guy who's really so concerned about the wealth. He's also a guy who's talked about giving away a lot of his wealth. So it's really interesting to see that stock, though, really catapult to the upside. Yesterday, up about 11%. You had Zoom up about 8%. And a lot of the Chinese names started to stick out yesterday. JD and NetEase and Baidu. There'd been some pressure here and there, but those names actually had a pretty nice performance yesterday. All of them up 3%, 6%, 8%. Pretty nice day for some of these Chinese names as well. Now, did we have some volume yesterday? Yeah, we certainly did, but it has been kind of slowly coming down. We talked about that 30 million number that we'd been over multiple times so far in August, and then we started to drift back a little bit. And Friday, we talked about 27 million contracts. Yesterday, about 24 million contracts. So we have come back. These are still huge numbers in any other year, but we are seeing a little bit of a pullback right now in some of that. Now, NVIDIA also did stand out yesterday. That name has been an absolute animal movement to the upside. And yesterday, about a 6%. You had Ross Stores as well moving to the upside. So what was really dragging on the Dow? Well, there was some strengths in the Dow as well. You had Home Depot, you had Walmart, you had McDonald's, Pfizer, J&J, Merck. That all sounds pretty good. But then you look over at some of the industrial space and the financials really dragging on the Dow. Financials really being one of the areas where we'd seen incredible weakness yesterday. We've talked about, can the financials put back-to-back days and put this together? We also talked about JP Morgan. Can it actually sustain above $100 a share? The answer is no. It got up over 105, maybe even up to 107, and then pulled back underneath 100 once again. So JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, American Express, all sort of pulling back yesterday, that pulling on the markets, at least the Dow. And then you had Boeing and Raytheon and Dow. So you get into the industrial side of things as well, just pulling on the market. So sort of even a push-pull even within the Dow itself, but certainly the push to the downside, certainly showing out and actually playing out in terms of how the financials, industrials really did lag and drag on the Dow yesterday. We had one of the great roundtables that we've had for Market Rebellion in a very long time. We've been doing these things now for multiple months. Gene Munster showed up, and he was absolutely fantastic. He didn't have a lot of fanfare, didn't have a lot of slides, didn't have any slides. But I'll tell you what, you want to watch that. I know they're reposting it today onto Twitter, so you can get a hold of that. Go to Market Rebellion. You'll be able to see it there through that Twitter account. And you'll be able to listen to and potentially watch, I guess, the replay of that. It was absolutely outstanding. Our CEO did a great job of hitting just about every single stock and topic that Gene is so much of an expert in. And we had a lot of conversations about Tesla. We had a lot of conversations, obviously, about Apple. We talked about the chips for Tesla, autonomous driving. Also, one of the things that really did stand out was he talked about the hardware and software bundle for Apple. And that was something that, you don't really hear a lot of conversation about. And that's what makes Gene unique and so great is he was able to give us some of his foresight. He also, and I'll tell you this, you better watch this. I asked an interesting question, I thought, and he had an absolutely great answer. And my question was, what stock are you looking at now that you think in the future will be one of these almost like FANG type stocks? Like what name? Is there any specific name? I actually thought he might say, well, you kind of can go here or there. He actually gave us an answer and he gave us a name. So I'll leave that up to you to follow up and watch that because it's definitely worth watching the entire thing anyways. But that I think was something that did stand out. And I don't think any of us saw that name in underneath what he was going to probably give us. So we did hit intraday highs today in the S&P 500. So everybody can stop talking about that, the watched pot and all the rest of it. we can forget about that for right now. Additionally, we had earnings and we talked about the earnings and retail earnings and we had Kohl's, we had Walmart, and we had Home Depot. All spectacular numbers, or at least beats. Kohl's definitely a beat. The other numbers pretty spectacular, I thought. Stocks were up significantly and then pulled back. And as a matter of fact, we talked about the Dow and some of the names that are pulling on the Dow. Home Depot and Walmart are some of those names that are actually pulling on the Dow at least a little bit right now. Because early on, the Dow was up over 100 points. It started to slide, and here we are still down about 90 points right now. We've been lower, but we've seen a little bit of recovery, at least off of those lows. The NASDAQ was indicated up about 49 points. The NASDAQ, it's up about 35 points right now, so it's holding in there pretty good. We did have record highs in terms of Home Depot, in terms of Walmart. Also, some of those that are actually going to reporting as well this week. We've got Target, we've got Lowe's. Those names had a nice pull to the upside, also getting a little bit of that pull to the downside. So something to keep an eye on. By the way, gold today hit 2020, a big spike, and we talked about gold yesterday having a nice move. Silver with a recovery. Silver today up another 3%, up over 28.5. So we've seen a nice strong move out of the metals. Crude not doing a whole heck of a lot, so not really worth covering that. But the volatility index, it remains right around 21. That's where we have been. We've been in this range, and we talked about it earlier as we were coming down 5-point ranges, and it was sliding down from 30 to 35, down to 28 to 33, call it, maybe 25 to 30. It's shrunken even more so, and now we're talking 21, 22, that sort of a range. So pretty interesting to watch this whole thing. Some of the drags on the market, once again, in terms of the Dow, financials. You also have Chevron really did stand out because that was down decently today. And Walmart and Home Depot, definitely a pull on the markets as I'm watching the market slide a little bit more out of the corner of my eye. What are the leaders today in the NASDAQ as we're sort of breaking this whole thing down and we see this dislocation? Well, JD, another one of the Chinese names, Zoom, Tesla again, Amazon, Netflix, microchip, you get the idea. These chips have been a very big participation when it comes to the NASDAQ. And we talked about yesterday hitting new highs. So there are areas of the marketplace that certainly are a big part of what's going on. And it's not just the power 4 or 5 names, but we certainly have watched those names and how great they've performed as well. So not taking anything away from that, but I think you have to look at the broader picture. And I'm hearing more and more people talk about it. This didn't just start happening. The broader side of the markets has been participating for quite a while now. And I'm talking about when you look at the biotechs and you look at the semiconductors and you look at the housing stocks and you look at a lot of different areas, there are other areas that have been participating very, very nicely along the way. They just don't get as much of the limelight because of the fact that their market caps aren't quite what we're talking about when we talk about those power names. Now, little unusual activity. I talked about some of the metals. I got to go right back to those metals. SLV, we're seeing paper in there again. And we've been seeing this for months. And I got to give credit to our chart man, and who's one of the very best with technicals out there. Brian McCormick does an absolutely outstanding job. He's been on this the entire run. We've also seen an unusual option activity where if you go all the way back to April, And as specifically, you get into the month of May, you are seeing SLV buying time and time and time again. Very, very aggressive buying in that. So that's something that's been really, really interesting to watch. So what am I seeing today? SLV trading about 26.5. So what are they buying? These guys are rolling right now. And when I say rolling, I'll explain that in a second. So they did have a position on from November, and they were buying the 20s and selling the 26 calls. We call that a call spread, $6 call spread. They're rolling out of that today into the November 27 calls and selling the 33 calls. So it's $5 spread now. Excuse me, $6 spread now. Once again, same trader, definitely rolling out of one, putting it onto the other, made a really nice profit on the first one. And now you can see this as this is playing out. By the way, the November 27s, they're trading for about $3. The 33s for about $1.50, call it. So it's a cost of $1.50 for this $6 spread. And if it gets up, if SLV continues this run to the upside, and we're hearing more and more people talk about SLV and this run that it's been on and how much more room there potentially is, and they're looking at past performance, all that kind of stuff. All I'm telling you is this. We are seeing that buying today. 5,000 of those November 27s, paying about $3 for those. Folks, knowledge is king. You got to have understanding. That's what our guys here at Market Rebellion do. They are educators, do a great job. They can explain a lot of different things. And when you get a lot more comfortable with things, you can understand the spreading of things and why you might do that, as opposed to doing just a singular option or other even more complex option strategies. Those guys know it all, and they can absolutely be a beneficial part of what you'd want to do to be a much more successful, at least have the opportunity to be a much more successful trader. Have a great day of trading, folks. Enjoy the day.